let's get these tires off. First thing you're going to want to do is remove the caliper retention spring. That's this piece of metal right here. And how you remove these is you want to get yourself a flathead screwdriver, put it right in between this crack here, and pry it. And then you can pry it right out of there. So what you're basically trying to do is you're trying to get this little insert out of this little back cubby hole right here. Once it's out of there, the whole thing will pop forward and come off. Get your T45, and you're going to be putting you're going to be taking out 2 bolts, this one right here and this one right here. Now, as you're pulling these out, the guide pins, you want to kind of twist, apply pressure to the side of your wrench or ratchet or whatever you're using. That way you're actually going to be pulling it out of its little hole enough where you can grab the back of it and pull it out. Now that you've got the 2 bolts out in the back and your retaining clip off, if you look right here, you can see that I've got a pretty nasty lip on my rotor, so getting the pads off of here are going to be more difficult. You're not going to be able to just pry this out straight. So you can either get a screwdriver in here and pry to close your, to push your piston back into the caliper, or get yourself a C-clamp. And you can close the caliper this way. See right inside of there. Sorry, the lighting's not better, but you can see that I'm slowly pushing that caliper, or the piston, inside of the caliper. Now you don't need to do it the whole way. You just need to get the caliper loose enough so where you can get it off the rotor. Like so. Just let go. Remove the old pads. Move the caliper out of the way. Somewhere safe. Try your best not to let it hang by the brake line, because that could cause damage. And to remove the caliper bracket, you just need a 17 millimeter. Make sure that you're holding the bracket before you take off the final bolt. You don't want that falling on your foot. And to remove the rotor, some rotors are going to have screws in here that you'll need to remove. Some rotors are going to have little lock washers that you're going to have to pry off. This one's just held in by years of use and heat and more than likely rust. So you just want to take your hammer and you're going to want to hit it around the rim in these spots right here. If you're concerned about hitting your studs and you don't want to mess up the threads, go ahead and get your lug nuts and turn them on there a couple turns just to make sure that your threads are not exposed. And there you have it. All right, rear brakes. First thing you need to do again is remove your caliper retaining spring. Go ahead, just put a flathead screwdriver right here and pop these out like that, and then do the same to the bottom. Right inside of here, your 2 slide pins. They are also the T45s from the front. Suspension's in the way a little bit on this one. There we go. Just fingertips, all I need. There we go. Now, compressor kicks on, of course, but I'm just going to try to talk over it. When doing rear brakes, especially if you have a manual car, make sure your handbrake is down. These are the integrated rear brakes. A little bit of wiggling, you might need to use a pry bar to help you out a little bit, but I think I'm going to get this without it. Our pads. Alright, and you can see right here, this is what it looks like when you have an integrated handbrake into your caliper. This is not a push-pull caliper. This is a spiral caliper, or the spiral piston, so it spins out rather than pushing in and out. It turns as it expands out, kind of like a screw. It screws in, it screws out. It's basically the same thing. We'll go over that as soon as I am ready to put this back together. I'll show you the specialty tools that you need to do this, and we'll get back on that in here in a minute. Meantime, kind of move these out of the way. Next thing we're going to be doing is removing these two bolts. You're going to need a 14mm. I like using a gear wrench for these personally because it applies the torque directly to the bolt rather than a socket. It makes it much easier to break them loose. And once they're loose, go ahead and get your electric ratchet. Or if you don't have an electric ratchet, just use whatever you got. I've just been doing this too long and I'm too lazy. Now that the rotor's exposed, again, if you're concerned about hitting this thing with a hammer to break it loose, go ahead and put your lug nuts on each of these studs to protect their threads. Alright, now let's go over this special type of piston. This piston is a spiral piston because it screws in and out. Rather than being pushed by pressure, it pushes it in a rotation, kind of like a bolt going into a hole. This is used on rear calipers that have the integrated handbrakes. So like this setup right here. So make sure you don't try to push these in and out because you're not going to get nowhere and you're probably going to break the piston or the caliper. This is the tool you're going to need. Alright, so when it comes in the box, which is over here, I'll just go ahead and grab this real quick, show you the box. This is my personal one, so it's well used. And you'll notice that it came with two sets of these. Okay, one is for right hand screwing and one is for left hand screwing. So, and to be honest with you, I honestly don't know how to tell the difference until you're actually doing it, depending on which side you're going to need. So I usually just try one. If it doesn't work, I switch to the other one. So for this, we're going to be using the A set. You can see how it's got the two prongs. These prongs fit directly into the two holes right here on the piston's head. Then the two holes on the back of the set get put into this on the back side of the tool. In there. All right, and once it's locked in, you can go ahead and start unscrewing this piece until this plate matches up with the back of the caliper, or I'm guessing the front of the caliper actually. Now this is the part where you figure out which one you need to use. See, I'm going to be rotating this in a loosening faction or a counterclockwise, and you can see the piston turning, and that's the wrong way. So let's try going back the other way, and you can see the piston is actually screwing back into itself, and this is staying stable, so I have the right size. If this starts coming loose and you have to keep retightening this part up to hold this plate to the front of the caliper, you have the wrong tool and you need to switch over to the other one. It should keep itself, it should constantly keep pressure applied, so all you have to do is keep turning. Like so. Forever and a day. All right, I've just reached the bottom. I can't turn it anymore. Go ahead, get yourself a adjustable wrench. Put it onto the head right here, and you're gonna need to twist this. So in my case, because this is a right-hand tighten, or a counterclockwise tighten, I need to tighten this to push it down. To remove the tool, like so. And there you have it. Your piston is now compressed. All right, back to the front. Got our new rotors going on. I did my shitty paint job on my calipers just to make them look shinier. Go ahead and install the caliper bracket. 2 bolts we took out previously. All right, next part, go ahead and put our inner pad in. You might need to squeeze these two together just a little bit and then press them in. And then our outside pad goes just like this, and you can see how it kind of has the little piece of metal tab that just sits right here in that groove. All right, it takes a little bit of lining up and getting the pads snug up against the calipers, so that way it can actually slide in. But once you get it, you'll get it. Next, go ahead, get your guide pins. I'm gonna put just a little bit of the brake part lubricant on there. I'm a big fan of the purple stuff. I'm gonna just put a little bit on each of them and just work it around there so it can slide in and out of there easier. Just give it a nice thin coating all the way around. Start the top one. Do the bottom one all the way down and snug it. And go back. Finish the top one. And snug it. Which of course is going going to mess up my paint pretty much no matter what I try to do. All right, now for the rear, we've got the new rotor on. I've got one lug nut down just hand tight, just to keep the rotor straight. Get your brake lubricant. Just gonna put a little drop onto these 4 spots. And try not to have it shoot out all over the place like that. So when you're done, it'll look something like this. These are the parts where the pads sit, and that's where they're going to be moving when you compress and release the brake pedal. Go ahead and put the caliper bracket back on. 14 millimeter again. Snug those down. Next, you can go ahead and get your guide pins. You're going to put a little bit of your brake lubricant on them and just sort of work it all the way around the sides of it. You need to make sure that these are well lubricated so that they can go in and out of their guide pin valleys. And the one by itself goes into the front. Go ahead. I'm just starting that one to make lining up the bottom hole easier. Don't put it down yet, or else you will more than likely not be able to align the bottom guide pin. All right, with the bottom guide pin started, go ahead, put it all the way down. And finish off the top. So take your new caliper retention spring, and these can be a little bit difficult, especially if you just painted yours like I did, to not mess up your paint. But we'll do the best we can. And there you have it. Brakes 101.